I'm Jennifer Powell, host of Take a Look, a time for us to take a look at people, organizations, and culture in Lancaster County. And for my inaugural show, I have members of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP. Here with us is Blanding Watson, president, Dr. Leroy Hopkins, historian, as well as Rosemary Krill, executive member. Please take time to introduce yourself. Rosemary, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Rosemary Krill, and I've been a member of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP for about 7 years, ever since I moved back to Lancaster. I've been secretary of the branch for 6 years, and you all know, having served in other volunteer organizations, that a secretary taking the minutes is the one who begins the history.
Yes,
so that's
ma'am.
what we'll be talking about.
Thank you. Nice to have you. Blanding.
I'm Blanding Watson. I'm president of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP. I have been a member for decades and also family members for generations. I'm just happy to be here and to participate in this dialogue and discussion today.
I'm Leroy Hopkins. I'm a member of the NAACP. I serve on the board of Lancaster History. I'm a retired professor of German from Millersville University, and I'm also the historian for the African American Historical Society of South Central Pennsylvania.
Well, we have a pristine and fine group of guests here to talk about the NAACP. This is a big year for the Lancaster branch. Blanding, tell us what's going on with the Lancaster branch this year.
Well, we are celebrating 100 years as of July 9th of last year, and we have a lot of activities and educational pieces to our organization, obviously for the community and so forth. And just excited about what has happened in the past and where we're going in the future. And so I'm just excited. We're going to be doing many things around education, criminal justice, and some things around housing, environmental justice, and education, of course, and civic engagement.
Wow, a lot going on. 100th anniversary, and so in celebration of that, a journal was written and sponsored by the Lancaster County Historical Society. And Rosemary, tell us about this. You are the author of the NAACP piece here in this volume 124.
That's right, Jennifer. About 2 years ago, when we saw the 100th anniversary coming up, Blanding led the executive committee to begin thinking about it, and we established a committee for the 100th anniversary history. When I came on as secretary, I asked for the old files and tried to find out what had been going on, and there really wasn't a whole lot. And we all know, with an all-volunteer organization, how the files might move from person to person and not be kept as carefully, perhaps, as an ongoing organization.
Right.
And so it seemed like a really good time to gather the history of the Lancaster branch. I had spoken to people who said, oh, the Lancaster branch began in the 60s. Or I'd spoken to people who said, well, you know, it was really the 1980s. And I thought, well, we really have to pin this down. So we established a committee. Dr. Hopkins was a member, Patricia Hobson-Shelton, Dr. Marilyn Parrish, Karen Dixon, who had been a long-time secretary and a wonderful source of information, and of course Blanding ex officio. So we started working, and our goal was to have a PowerPoint program to show at the 100th anniversary gala last September. Well, as we worked and gathered information and more information, I started putting it down in a document just to capture it all. And soon there was 140 pages and over 400 footnotes, and it just seemed like it might be something that the Lancaster County Historical Society would be interested in. We presented it to them, and Mike Abel, who's the editor of the journal, and his committee read it and were enthusiastic about it. It was really long for the Historical Society, but Robin Surratt, the vice president, approached Tracy Cutler, the who also represents the Lancaster County Community Foundation.
Right.
And the Community Foundation was also celebrating an anniversary. And those two organizations came together and funded this wonderful book, which really now captures the history so it won't be lost again.
Truly a piece of history. And Dr. Hopkins, I'd love to hear, there are many significant events that has happened in the course of the history of the NAACP branch here. Is there anything from the journal that you would like to talk about or discuss, or just?
Sure. Well, one of the things, excuse me, The organization was reimagined in 1960. The first president was Ashley Dudley, who was a member of Bethel AME Church, where I am also a member.
Ah.
And it was decided in May of 1963. That's when Reverend Alexander Steffens came to be our pastor, that it was time to make a statement about discrimination in the city. And so there were marches through the downtown and also at Rocky Springs. I participated in one of the protests at Rocky Springs. Rocky Springs was where we had the Coatesville picnic.
Ah.
It was always the last Saturday in July, and we had access. When I say we, African Americans, had access to everything at the park except for the swimming pool. And so we decided we were going to picket it. And the result was the county pool was created. And so the NAACP was very effective in that one instance, and also in providing employment. There were no African Americans employed as clerks in the downtown.
Wow.
In none of the 5 and 10s or department stores. And so because of that direct action, that changed.
Yes, there were marches, in fact, down in the downtown, and there are pictures in the journal that actually show the folks that are marching for jobs and also for the desegregation. The front picture is that from the Rocky Springs march.
Herbert Cooper, that's Nelson Polite Sr., and Elizabeth Ford. Elizabeth Ford is deceased. Well, actually, all three of them were deceased.
Yes, there are three. What a treasure to have you, Dr. Hopkins, to be able to immediately be able to point out and to have participated in these historical, monumental events that occurred in our county. I'd love to hear, Rosemary, if you have any other pieces from the journal that you think we might want to bring up.
Well, I'm going to go back a little further and go back to the 20s
Yes.
when the Lancaster branch of the NAACP was created. And really, it was a very early branch. The NAACP had only been formed in 1909, just a few years before, by a group of black people and white people who were reacting to some riots that had occurred, one notably in Springfield, Illinois, where Abraham Lincoln was born and lived, and it was on his birthday in 1909 that they issued a call and established this National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And then, we'll fast forward a little bit to the 20s. The First World War had ended, the economy was in a boom period. There was a sense of optimism, I think, in Lancaster. Frank Musser was the mayor. He was a coalition mayor. He gathered Democrats and Republicans towards urban reform.
Yes.
As I said, the Lancaster County Community Foundation was forming, the Chamber of Commerce, the Junior League, a lot of these civic organizations. But black people had been organizing for a while. The issues of jobs, housing, and education were constantly there. A pastor at Bethel AME Church had organized the Negro Civic League in 1917. There was a women's group, a civic group. As Dr. Hopkins mentioned, Bethel was a hub of this kind of organization. And Abraham L. Polite, who is the father of Nelson Polite, pictured here on our cover, had come here from South Carolina, probably to follow the tobacco industry. We're not quite sure. He was, and this is, I think, so interesting, he was a leader in the black community, involved in Bethel Church, in the political parties, in the NAACP. What was his paid employment?
Right.
Janitor in City Hall. And I think it just goes to show the underemployment of black people during that time of Jim Crow.
Yes.
But I like to think he used his position in City Hall to get to know people and know what was going on and learn. He got to know Mariana Gibbons Brubaker,
Yes.
wife of a duck farmer
Yes.
out in
A
near
white
Birmingham.
woman.
A white woman. Her father had been a member of the Anti-Slavery Society in Pennsylvania, and her grandfather had been conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was a member of the Society of Friends. They came together, and Abraham Polite brought his organizational talents from the black community. Marianna Givens had the means and the privilege, I have to say,
Yes.
of traveling with her husband during the cold winter months down south. She visited Tuskegee Institute. She went to national conventions of the NAACP. She brought to the organization here in Lancaster a larger national focus, and the two of them and many others working together. Laura Carter was the first president. She
Yes.
also was a member of Bethel AME Church. She was president for 10 years. So they started something that has had its bumpy road, but is still with us today.
Rosemary, thank you. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to hear from the president and want to hear some of his thoughts on the journal as well as the next 100 years.
You're watching Lancaster Community TV, LCTV 66.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer Powell with Take a Look, and today's guests are members of the NAACP, and we're talking about the journal as well as their 100th anniversary. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about the history and how things started, but really interested in knowing sort of the connection. There is a national NAACP planning. Can you tell us a little bit? You're very, very involved.
Yes, we do have a national organization. NAACP, of course, is the oldest and largest civil rights organization in the United States, founded in 1909 and came and evolved out of the Niagara movement. And as Rosemary had stated earlier, it was formed because of race riots and also to address a lot of the hate crimes and discrimination and racism that were going on in the earlier century. And then, of course, going back over the last few hundred years that black people in this country had experienced. And the work, of course, evolves around education, advocacy, civil rights, criminal justice, voting rights. We're heavily involved with the Voting Rights Act, and also in 1954, the integration of schools, Brown versus Board of Education, which many may not know or aware of. The NAACP had advocated integrated schools in 1954, and the Supreme Court made that decision, of course, and schools were, of course, desegregated federally. And then, of course, in various states across the country, that continued, obviously, to happen in a way where schools were still not maybe necessarily desegregated because of state laws and so forth, but the federal, of course, had came in and addressed a lot of those areas over time. You mentioned earlier about national organization. We do have state organizations too. We have state conferences across the whole country, and in those state conferences we have branches, and then we have college units and youth councils, and also high school chapters as well across the U.S. And then, of course, a lot of the branches, college chapters, do follow the mission of the national organization in those specific areas that I had mentioned a little earlier.
So 100 years, that is a long time.
Yes, it is.
So there is an event coming up that is the Freedom Fund celebration. And I'd love anyone who'd like to jump in. Last year's was in September, October. Keynote speakers, performances. This year's.
Well, last year, like you had mentioned, our speaker was Deborah Addo. She's actually the COO of Penn State Health, over 18,000 employees in Pennsylvania. And she actually gave our keynote last year. And like you mentioned, it was a very wonderful and great experience and time that we all had in that celebration of our ancestors, I would like to say, because they helped us to get to where we are today. And this year, of course, our annual Freedom Fund will be October 3rd.
October
3rd. At
October
the
3rd.
Doubletree Willow Valley.
Okay.
For people in the community to know and be aware of. And,
what if people want to buy tickets or sponsor?
Well, if people want to buy tickets, we will have tickets on Eventbrite.
Okay.
And also, we will be sending a press release out. We have Instagram page, we have Facebook, and we also have some posters and flyers and so forth where we'll be disseminating information to individuals that want to know how to buy a ticket. or learn more about the NAACP and our upcoming event.
You said that your website is under construction, but can you give that out to the folks just so knowing that that might be a place to go? And then is the Facebook NAACP Lancaster branch, and you can find the Facebook, the Instagram, and follow and share. So the website is
NAACP Lancaster.org.
NAACP Lancaster.org. That's wonderful. So this year's event, October 3rd, right?
That is correct.
And do you have the keynote yet determined, or is that sort of top secret information and you've got to follow to find out?
Yes, we actually do have someone that we're homing in on
Okay,
right now.
okay.
And that information will be coming out soon for the general public to know.
That's wonderful.
You know, it's also important, I wanted to emphasize something about the 100-year anniversary book. It is a snapshot of our history,
yes,
and we will have additional work coming out, and articles, and a videography, actually. And things will be evolved in that area as well for the future. So stay tuned for that.
Yes, for sure. Rosemary, please.
Jennifer, can I just jump in? And I have to be a good secretary and
Yes.
say that the best way to become involved with the NAACP is to join. And the easiest way to join is to access the national website, naacp.org. There's a little button that says join. And if anyone out there is already a member and perhaps it has lapsed and wants to know their membership number to rejoin, I'd be happy to get in contact and send that to them.
thank you.
R. Krill, NAACP, LancasterPA.org.
We'll put that out then as well.
And I have to say, it's $30 a year for an annual adult membership, or if you want to start paying to become a life member, you can pay $75 over the course of 10 years. To me, $30 in this day and age is
that's
relatively little. Some of the funds go to our local branch, and some of the funds go to the national organization. As Blanding said, the national organization is dedicated to advocacy, to working through the court system,
Yes.
to publicity for social justice.
yes.
You know, it's also important to emphasize, too, that they can go to naacp.org to learn more about the organization, national,
Yes.
and also our work, because our work is based upon the national's work.
Yes, yes, yes. There are pillars and specific areas of focus. So Dr. Hopkins, would love to hear a historical, we were talking about the journal, but any sort of activities or programs that you have been involved with as a historian for this chapter, branch. It's a branch, not a chapter. My apologies.
Yes. Well, one of the things that I'm involved with are there's a Seventh Ward Oral History Project, and we're working with Brandeis University. Because of the demonstrations in downtown Lancaster and at Rocky Springs, it was the National Urban League came to Lancaster. A Walter Gershenfeld was hired by the Chamber of Commerce to do a study of Negro employment in Lancaster. As a result of that, the Urban League was created. Now, the Urban League no longer exists. 2013, it closed its doors. And what we're doing with Brandeis University is studying what has happened in the last 60 years.
Yes.
And we'll be presenting that at the end of this month in New York at a national conference.
Well, the history in our community is so rich and so diverse, and the trailblazing work of this branch, it's just so impressive. Going back to you, Blanding, what other activities and programs does the NAACP sponsor, put out for the community?
We continue to do town halls on education, civic engagement, health equity, and then we also have a focus on legal redress, because we do address and handle a lot of issues on complaints as well, whether that be employment, in housing, and also education. But we do have some focus around educational town halls for the community. And we also have another event coming up too, which I didn't mention earlier, that we do in collaboration with U Street Media at Thaddeus Stevens College every year, and that's in December, where we give toys away to the community.
Yes, that's right.
And then most of our work, Rosemary had mentioned this somewhat a little earlier, we focus on policies
Yes.
and protest, which is mentioned probably all throughout the journal, and that's what helped us move forward. And also sitting down and meeting with our constituents as well so leaders within the community so that we can try to shape and change things for our community for the betterment of equality.
Yes. Good trouble.
Yes, good trouble.
Good trouble.
Like John Lewis used to say.
Yes, sir. One of the things that and Rosemary mentioned this very briefly, my apologies, is I was surprised to find out that this organization is managed and over pure volunteers. I think there's a myth out there that Blanding, as the president, you are an employee, but no, there are no employees with our local branch.
That is correct. Our branch is 100% volunteer ran.
Wow.
And then we're also looking at some things to develop some new things for the infrastructure
Yes.
in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And Jennifer, if there's time to tell how people can get a copy
I
of
was
this.
just gonna, you read my mind, Rosemary. Yes, this journal is, I read it. It is so interesting, again, because this is our community. This is the, the downtown Lancaster where these protests occurred. So yes, please tell us how we can get a copy.
This is a journal of Lancaster history, and it's available for sale at the Lancaster History Gift Shop at their main campus on President's Avenue. However, through the generosity of the Lancaster County Community Foundation and Lancaster History donors, extra copies were printed. And if there's a teacher or a book group leader or a church leader or a civic leader who would like to read this with a group, study it, those copies can be made available on a complimentary basis.
Oh wow, that's wonderful.
By contacting Mabel Rosenheck at Lancaster History. That's Mabel, Rosenheck at LancasterHistory.org.
You're so thorough. You are a perfect secretary. So we're going to be wrapping up. Is there anything else that you would like us to know about that we didn't discuss today?
Rosemary emphasized this a little earlier. If you would like to get involved or to volunteer with the organization, please reach out to us at 717-723-8892, which is our branch telephone number. And we also can give you some information as well relevant to the journal too.
Blanding, thank you. Dr. Hopkins, thank you. Rosemary, thank you. This has been a pleasure. My first show with the NAACP branch, and what history do we have right here in our community? I can't wait to see what the next 100 look like. So thank you for joining us, and I'm Jennifer Powell, and we took a look today at the Lancaster branch of the NAACP. See you soon.